Taylor McHargue, CBS and ESPN, joins us on the show. Taylor, man, there were some bangers and there were some high-flying, almost old Big 12 style type games, but I didn't mind a lot of scoring because it was dramatic. Great people, great players, great moments. Your thoughts? Let's start with A&M and the win and Connor Wigman, Willie Fritz and company.
A&M, what a win, right? I mean, that was a game that I think A&M fans would tell you over the last, I don't know how many years, they don't expect to typically win those games. Those are those games when you look at the end of the season for A&M, and the running joke is that it's 8-4 every year, and the games that they should win, they do win, and when they're an underdog, they lose. And this flipped that script. So if you're an A&M fan, there's so much to be excited about. That being said, it probably shouldn't have happened. The hold at the end of the game is about as bad a call as I've ever seen. Notre Dame, the complaints from that side are warranted. It wasn't even a hold. I mean, it was really a tackle. And that's brutal. But you know what? Those calls go both ways in every game all the time. And so A&M fortunate to be on the right side of that one. And I think it totally reshapes their season. I think if you're an A&M fan compared to Texas right now, you feel really good about where you're at and with where Marcel Reed is at. And so, look, that was a really exciting game for them and one that they should be very proud of. And then for Houston, asking about Coach Fritz and Wegman, 3-0, I think they'll win this weekend as well against Oregon State and move to 4-0. And we talked about this back in August. I felt like this was a team that you would see really flip where they were at a year ago. Willie Fritz has been a program builder at every step of the way, and I thought that this would be no exception. And I completely think that this is a team that you'll see get to the 8, potentially 9 win mark in the Big 12. I don't think they're going to compete for the Big 12 championship this year, but I do think that's a team that you'll see end up this year with a big step forward from where they were a year ago.
Taylor, what do you make of Arch Manning and his mechanical struggles right now? And he's just so out of sync and doesn't even look like the guy who played last year. You wouldn't think that the hype would get to him, but this is treading on Garrett Gilbert territory for Texas in the early going.
Yeah, he just looks uncomfortable to me. I mean, I think that it goes without saying, but I'm not in that building. I don't think he's hurt. I don't think I'd be stunned if it comes out later that he's got some sort of elbow or rotator cuff or something going on. I just don't think he looks comfortable. And this is a guy that, if you go back to a year ago against Mississippi State and against UTSA, I understand those aren't, world beater programs, and it's not the top of the SEC, but neither is UTEP. And it looks like from a year ago to now, he's taken a step back. And the stretch where he goes 0 for 9, and some of those incompletions are throws that, even a below average FBS and certainly a Power 4 quarterback, you'd expect to hit a lot of those throws. And so I think for Coach Sarkisian and that staff, I think they're trying to do everything they can to get him comfortable and try and figure out what does it take, especially this week against Sam Houston, what will really be their last tune-up game, to try and get that offense on the same page and find the early down easy throws, because he's missing stuff that it's not just the shot plays and tight contested windows. We're talking quick game stuff. He's missing throws on the move, the things that he did so well a year ago. And again, against teams like Mississippi State and UTSA, I understand these are not the top teams that he's going to face. But again, Malachi Nelson for UTEP outperformed Arch Manning. If you just look down stat lines and some of the throws that Malachi Nelson made, you would say the better quarterback of the day was Nelson. So this is, again, the last opportunity that Texas really has to try and get him comfortable before they head on the road to Florida and begin SEC play.
I know we want to get to some of the big matchups this weekend, but what have you thought about the fit there in Coral Gables with Carson Beck up to this point?
Yeah, I think he's one of the top examples of why, in this era of the portal and NIL, I think they're proving, guys like Carson Beck are proving that it pays to go get a veteran quarterback and somebody that has the capability. And I think it's also probably pretty vindicating for him that a lot of what was thrown on him last year when he was at Georgia maybe wasn't fair. I think some of the criticism that he saw a year ago, I think they were blaming some things on him during his time down the stretch at Georgia, that maybe there were issues at Georgia that we didn't talk about. But I think the biggest thing for Carson Beck is I think that may be the best offensive line in the country. And if they're not the number one, they're certainly the top 3 units in the country. And to me, they're the clear favorite right now in the ACC. Right there, kind of next to them at 1B, I would have Florida State. But those 2 teams, I think, on a warpath out of the ACC this year. And just again, the quarterbacks that we've seen that are veteran guys that have gone in the portal this year, I think you're seeing why. And we, coming off this conversation about Arch Manning, it doesn't always just click for young guys. Sometimes it takes a little while for these guys to get comfortable. But Beck obviously playing really well, and I think that really is the favorite in the ACC this year.
Taylor McHargue, by the way, is on the Big 12 show, the Big 12 Now, with Peter Sousa every week. Also was at what I did not expect it to be close, but Missouri State and SMU over the weekend. Man, that thing got a little bit dicey, didn't it? And it was great to see both you and Brandon Marcello, who joins us, also a part of that broadcast.
Yeah, it was great working with Brandon, his first game on the sideline, and really a treat working with him. Look, if you're an SMU fan, I would not read too much into that game. I thought they just sleptwalked, and we're fortunate to get out of there with a win. And Missouri State, it was a spirited effort for them. It was their first game at home in the FBS. I know a lot of people tuned into that game and thought, what the heck is SMU doing in Springfield, Missouri? But they just sleptwalked early in that game, and it did not seem like a team that was super motivated to be there. And that's tough sometimes. You come off an emotional loss at home against Baylor, and then you got to pick yourself up off the mat against a Conference USA team on the road. And SMU looked like they just weren't super motivated to be there. I think you'll get the exact opposite out of them this week, as they go on the road to TCU in what will be a huge game for really both leagues, ACC and Big 12, with playoff implications later on in the year. But and then not to mention that it's the DFW battle. But I would not be that worried if I'm an SMU fan, just in terms of motivation. I think they need to get their defense, the handful of guys, Kilgore in the middle and a handful of other guys on the defensive side that are banged up right now. If they can get a couple of those pieces back, that'll make a big difference for SMU.
Yeah, I think they might have been looking ahead a little bit. Sleepwalking plus looking ahead to those frogs in that iron skillet for sure. Taylor, in the Big 12, Baron Morton's playing really well. Devin Dampier's playing really well. Game of the year candidate, certainly a heavyweight fight for one of the top spots in the Big 12, at least as it stands right now, coming up in Salt Lake City. What do you think about Utes versus Red Raiders on Saturday?
Yeah, what a big game coming up. I mean, I think this may end up being I could totally see this being a game that we look back at the end of the year and it was the biggest game in the league for the season, and also wouldn't be shocked if it ends up being a rematch of the Big 12 championship. I think Utah, Texas Tech, and Iowa State look like the kind of the top tier of this league. And I think right behind that group is TCU, that, if you wanted to lump them into the top 4, I would have no problem with that either. But Texas Tech really hasn't been tested to this point in the season. I mean, their non-conference was about as easy as it gets, while also facing, a couple FBS teams that were in there. But we're going to learn a lot about them in this game. And I think the number one thing that I'm looking for, the Texas Tech defensive line, that they went out and spent a lot of money in the portal to bring in some of these pieces. How do they look against Devin Dampier, who is, as a +1 runner, one of the top quarterbacks in the country running the football, ran for over 1,100 yards a year ago at New Mexico. And I think if Texas Tech's defense can make Dampier one-dimensional, is such a coach-speaky way of saying this, but you got to get Dampier to obvious passing downs and make him deliver the football downfield. If Utah is staying ahead of the sticks and getting into 3rd and short and 4th and 1 situations, Utah is going to stay on the field on offense. And that's kind of a worst-case scenario for Texas Tech. They need to win first down, not let the +1 running game for Dampier get going, because if it does, I think that's where Utah wins this game.
Why is Clemson not scary anymore? Taylor, what happened?
I just don't think they're elite on the perimeter. I don't know that there's an NFL guy on that roster at receiver right now. And when we think about, I know Cade Klubnik's getting crushed right now. I'm not sure Cade Klubnik's the problem. He's not the answer. I don't know that he's doing enough that you would say, man, this guy's the top quarterback in the league. I think we just talked about Carson Beck. I think he's playing better. Castellanos is playing better at Florida State. But I also think if you go down the line of the skill room for Miami versus the skill room at Clemson, I think Cade Klubnik would look a lot better if you swap those receiver rooms between Miami and Clemson. And so that was what stood out to me against Georgia Tech, was as a quarterback, that's pretty concerning if you're having to go quarterback run game and screens to try and move the ball against Georgia Tech. That drive in the third quarter where they had to methodically go down the field and they're picking up 3 yards, 4 yards at a time. The explosiveness from those teams that we think about with Clemson, with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, we're a long way from the skill players that they had on those teams to where we're at today. Think about how much better Hunter Renfrow, even, who's been a good pro, if you plugged him into this team, what a difference maker he would be. And Hunter Renfrow, I don't even know if he's in the top 5 of the receivers that Clemson had during those national championship runs, just in terms of the NFL guys that they had during that stretch. So to me, I think it's a personnel issue more than anything else. I just don't think they have the guys to be still a good football team, but are they a national championship team? No, I think they're a long ways from that right now.
Yet another week, Taylor, goes by and K-State still looks sick.
Yeah, the wheels are the wheels completely off? I don't know, but they may be down to one wheel. That's another team that total head scratcher to me. Coming into the season, like everybody else, I'll be the first one to raise my hand. I thought this was going to be I think I had them. It was my prediction was Kansas State versus Texas Tech for the Big 12 championship at the beginning of the season. So I'm right there with everybody else that has egg on their face with this team. What stands out to me, and less so this past weekend against Arizona, because I think they got outplayed, but the first 3 weeks of the season, it felt like they were in all the right positions on both sides of the ball and just couldn't make plays. There was all the opportunities to make big plays and get off the field on defense, and it was either a drop pass here or a missed assignment from the offensive line or a missed tackle, and those things adding up. And I think the loss to Army kind of broke that spirit early in the season. And it's a lot is made of, the joke now is, man, don't go over to Ireland and lose that game because second year in a row, you think about Florida State from a year ago and the issues that they had and what ended up being a 2-10 season for Florida State. And then fast forward now to Kansas State. Now the question is that even a bowl team this year? I think probably not. I don't know where they're going to find 5 more wins on that schedule. So that's a team that, look, I think you're trying to do everything you can to, if you're Kansas State right now, it's just try to circle the wagons and get to 5 more wins. If you can get to the postseason at all this year, at this point in the season, I think that would be considered a success.
Taylor, I'll tell you, I just did a top 5 that's going to air on Wednesday on the show today. I've done some research into this. The curse of the leprechaun is real, and it goes back to 1989. It's more than just last year. It is so real.
It's been the last 3 or 4 years, but also dating back to the 80s.
So I'll send it to you when it's done and all ready to go. So, because it's
please do.
Yeah, it's wild how that turns each and every week. How bad do you feel for the Tennessee kicker?
Man, it's very rare, I feel like, in major college football when you see a kid that is, I don't know if saying scared is too strong of a word, but extremely nervous. When they showed his eyes on camera, you could tell that this moment was just too big for him. And for Georgia, gosh, even in a season where it felt like this summer, this was the year that Kirby Smart in Georgia just didn't get enough respect or attention. And we spent so much time talking about all these other power conference teams and power teams, and Georgia's still sitting there. And I get Gunnar Stockton is not, the sexiest quarterback to talk about and gets all the storylines, but this is still Georgia. And there are still a bunch of NFL dudes on both sides of the ball for that team. And for Tennessee, the way that they came out, all the explosive plays in the first quarter, and to see that, and it was like a horror movie for Tennessee, just to see the bad guy getting closer and closer and closer and then squeeze you out. It's a brutal loss for Tennessee. And for Georgia, man, if you don't lose that one, where else are the spots in this schedule, especially with how Texas looks and they get them at home? This looks to me, again, like another season where we'll be talking about Georgia into December and January.
I got to sneak one more in there for you, Taylor, because there's one more big game I'm curious on. You're a Lone Star Texas high school football guy, a battle of 2 alumni as well, John Mateer, Jackson Arnold against his old team, Auburn, Oklahoma. Got any type of a feel on this game at all?
Yeah, I love Oklahoma in this game. To me, I think John Mateer may be, if he's not the best quarterback in the country, he's in the top 3 or 4. And these are the types of games what Sawyer Robertson, and we talked a lot about this, what he was able to do against Auburn a few weeks ago. I know it's different styles. Mateer's not nearly the stand-in pocket passer that Sawyer is, but I expect Mateer to play really well. And these are the exact kinds of defenses when we think about Brent Venables, the style that Jackson Arnold wants to play at quarterback. I think Venables is going to try and make him play left-handed. And I have a lot more faith in Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer than I do in what Jackson Arnold and Auburn are going to try and do against this front, specifically against Oklahoma. So I take Oklahoma. I think they win this by a couple scores. And I think right now that should be the Heisman favorite. And I believe he is the Heisman favorite still in John Mateer.
Thank you, Taylor. Have a great – where were you at this weekend?
Connecticut. I've got UConn. My first time at UConn, and my first time seeing Jim Mora since his first game at UCLA when he had to travel to Rice. I know he could not believe he had to go to Rice Stadium in 2012.
There you go.
Hey, man, I hope you avoid overtime. That's kind of been their thing so far.
Right.
And that worked out well for them, but they've been competitive, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, they get Ball State, so I'm pretty confident this one's not going to go to overtime. But we'll see. You never know.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Great to have you on early in the week. Taylor McHargue, or anytime during the week. Taylor McHargue, CBS and ESPN.